There we go. All right, pretty sure. All right, everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, then I'll call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, January 25th at 6:30 p.m. And tonight it's a virtual WebEx meeting. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statute sections 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all members present except for Mr. Shadid and Commissioner Williams. Next item on the agenda is public input and public appearance. On anyone who wishes to bring any information or comments before this commission is welcome to do so at this time. If there's anyone that has joined this WebEx meeting that wishes to come forward for public input and public appearance, please make yourself known and state your name and your address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to come forward?
Hey, Brian, this is the time you should step forward and talk about the plans that you have.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sure. I was Bill Carity, Carity Land Development. He has worked on a parcel for the last year or so that I have in the Holy Hill corridor, and I thought he was going to join the meeting tonight. Now I don't see that he was on here. We had some confusion about this being a virtual meeting or actually in the village hall. So I guess he did not join us, but he had a few ideas regarding a parcel that I have in the Holy Hill corridor that he was wanting to kind of show the Plan Commission. And I'm hoping he'll get a chance to do that in the future here, I guess, just to throw a few different ideas on the table.
And so you have him
for
present that?
Everybody's reference, I had a discussion with Brian last week, and I told him to bring his ideas and Bill Carity's ideas, bring them to the table, and let's throw them out and see if they fly or if they don't fly. And I didn't realize today was going to be a virtual meeting, so it's a little more challenging for somebody outside to bring forth their ideas. But maybe, Brian, we should get an understanding of when is the last time that you can present your ideas, because I don't think we're going to get the right presentation tonight. So, Jeff, when can Brian bring his ideas to an actual in-person meeting so that we can see what he's talking about?
You're muted.
I had an opportunity to discuss this with Brian and share some emails with Bill Carity this afternoon. I also talked about this particular issue with Craig. Going forward, what would be the best approach as far as accepting individual property owner requests, if you will, for specific development or types of development they would prefer to see for their property, as opposed to, the process we've been following up to this point has been a broader approach as far as looking at future land use through our neighborhood districting corridor concept. And as I mentioned to both Brian and Bill, my thought was that we would begin the process of essentially soliciting comments from the public after our next community-wide meeting in February, where we're going to be formally presenting the neighborhood district and corridor concept, discussing some of the more specific land use scenarios for the two areas that we have so far, the Gateway Corridor, Holy Hill Road Corridor, and the Central Core area for the village, and approach it in that manner. However, one other option would be to schedule a specific agenda item at a regularly scheduled plan commission meeting and treat it as a consultation. If somebody wants to come forward and make some formal presentation about what they feel is best for their property, we could look at it and handle it in that manner, where we know we could set aside the time to let them make a formal presentation and get into some back and forth discussion with the plan commission if that's what they felt needed to happen. Honestly, David, I thought it would be best to not just leave it open, sort of a free for all for people to just show up at the open mic session of our meeting and start telling us what they think about their property. I would hope that it would be a little bit more of a formal process than that.
Yeah, and without knowing that, when somebody calls me, I don't know what to tell them. So
No,
I'm
I
being
understand.
educated here. So thanks for the education and tell me what I should tell these people when they call me.
Right, and I'll accept responsibility for not bringing this topic up further because it's certainly something we could see coming down the road as we get further and further into the land use planning effort, and that is how to deal with individual property owner requests.
Okay.
And so at this point, Craig and I are going to talk about it a little bit further, but I would maybe want to hear what the Plan Commission members think might be best from their perspective. But at this point, the thought was we'd wait wait until our February community meeting before we open the door, so to speak, to accepting individual property owner and property requests regarding future land use for their properties.
I have no problem with that, but I don't want to prevent people from coming and participating in these meetings. And I know a lot of people are interested.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
But some of the meetings like we've had so far, they've been specifically for our own purposes, our own workshop, and without wanting to get into lengthy discussion and debate over one particular property, I thought it'd be best if we just try and deal with our more broader issues like we have been until we get to a point like our next community meeting where we specifically will be asking for people's feedback, not only in a verbal setting, but we're going to be introducing the social pinpoint platform at that time and going over the tools within it that people can use to make their comments known to us about a specific piece of property or a general neighborhood district or corridor, or just generally about the village as a whole.
Okay, so for Brian and Bill, specifically Bill Carity, you came in a little late. And maybe Jim, I'm not sure what your involvement is tonight, Jim Sedgwick. So tonight we're not going to hear from individual people, but if you want to stay online and listen in, so you're a little more familiar with what we've been talking about. So when this February meeting comes up, you can talk then with a little bit more understanding of what we're doing. Does that sound fair enough, Brian, Bill, Jim?
Yeah, this is Brian. It sounds fine with me. Again, just when I saw that initial plan that was being put out there now, I think I just wanted to have some input on some of the properties that I have there, and especially because Bill, if you want to chime in at all, he had been working on a plan on one of those for quite some time.
Yeah, so we, the members of the board, want to hear from the residents. As I told you when we talked on the phone, We just need to get the right time and the right place to do it. And apparently tonight's not the night.
And that's fine with Bill Carey. We totally respect that. I know you're in your planning stages. You know, it may be that either I come in to talk to Jeff a bit so that I can become a little more grounded. I don't know if that's appropriate. And point out some physical things that I know about, frankly, the entire study area that I don't think are reflected in the plan.
So would it be our hope then that there could be several presentations that would happen that night? I mean, would it be more of an open mic, open feedback, or would you also schedule presentations for situations like Mr. Carey is willing to present? Jeff, I'm kind of pointing that towards your direction in the thought process. You're muted, buddy. I know.
Sorry. The thought was for the community session in February, we would be introducing the neighborhood district and corridor concept, also introducing the social pinpoint platform, instructing people on how to use it to provide us the feedback that we'll be looking for, that could occur not necessarily just that night, but also once we leave that workshop over the next period of time, which we have yet to determine, that we'll accept those sorts of comments and feedback and things. You know, we're going to be looking for people to say, you know, for this particular district, the Gateway District, I don't agree with your designation of this particular area for heavy industrial. I believe it should be X, or it should be residential, or it should be something different. That would be, I think, the kickoff point that then the Plan Commission, in part would want to read that feedback, take that, consider it, and then we can decide, to what degree do we want to open it up for individual presentations in a formal manner. Honestly, I think in the meantime, we can probably schedule some agenda items in our upcoming February and maybe March meeting, and give people an opportunity under the consultation process to give us a formal presentation if they have something that's ready and they're willing to share. That's more than just, I think it should be this use versus that use. That's one thought that we could do. But honestly, we need to be equitable to all property owners in the village. If everybody knew that they could come to a meeting virtually or in person and give us their opinion about what they think their land or their neighbor's land or the land around the corner should be used for, we would be inundated with requests. And we need to maybe anticipate that and plan, how best to handle that approach. But right now we're just not set up for it, and we certainly weren't anticipating being ready to do that this evening.
So you've obviously had discussions with Brian and with Bill to some degree, whether it be via email or phone call, or if any of them had stopped in the office. But is your suggestion for one of our regular Plan Commission meetings for us to have an item on the agenda for a consultation type of a situation so that they can present some of their thoughts and we can use that information or at least have knowledge of it as we look at our next planning session?
I think that would be fair, particularly if somebody has something that they have in a formal presentation, something they may have been working on, something they may have in the next couple of weeks that they could present to us. I guess I'm throwing that out to the group, whether or not you feel that would be appropriate to try and handle things that way.
I'm fine with that, as long as we get input from the residents. And is that a paid consultation, like somebody's coming before us for a building and they have to pay to come before us, or as part of the 2050 plan, it's a freebie?
No, I think we would treat that as sort of a freebie.
Yeah, okay. I'm good with all that.
Then the question is, for those who may not be savvy enough to understand or have gone through this sort of process in other communities before, do we want to somehow make it known to everybody that, you've got this opportunity as well? Or do we just simply wait for the community meeting in February and make that announcement at that point and try and focus their feedback through the social pinpoint and the process that we're trying to set them up for?
Yeah, I would try to focus it through that. That's why it's being set up, and that's what its purpose is. I'm sure you'll have some feedback there at that night, at that session, but I can't believe that we're going to be short of feedback. I think we'll get more than we can anticipate, but that's fine. It's welcomed, and it should be accepted because everybody has has something to say in regards to our 2050 plan, especially when it starts to directly affect or impact areas that either live in or own or do business in.
I will say that we re-engaged this discussion, how long ago? A month ago, 2 months ago now? And when I initially talked to Brian on the phone, he didn't realize it was restarted. So there may be a lack of knowledge out in the community that we have to do something to get people informed that we are doing this.
And I'll say that it seems to me kind of strange that you're going to give one property owner this, showcase in a meeting to, try to influence how a certain area is developed, yet you're not giving anyone else that same ability within the community. I mean, that seems kind of, not right to me.
Well, we're not saying no, not to anybody, but if they're looking to have a presentation in regards to property that they own or have been working on for a while, planned on, I don't have a problem allowing that to be stated and presented, because it's going to be part of the mix no matter what, whether it's set at the next plan commission meeting or if it's set at the next workshop that we have for the community. Either way, it's going to be said, but I think it's just an accommodation of a schedule more than it's anything. So I don't look at it as unfair. Anybody can reach out to any of us at any time. Your email's published, and if they had input into it, they could send an email to you. Your neighbors probably talk to you on a regular basis as to what their feelings are, and people that I meet talk to me about 2050 plan, and I get probably 5 or 6 emails a week in regards to what people would like to see as part of the 2050 plan. So everyone's having their say in one way or another. I'm not looking to create favorites to anyone, and I don't see it as such. If there's more of a formal presentation, that's because of their position and what they do for a living, not because it's an unfair advantage.
I would argue, or not argue, say that I think we already have kind of built-in nodes in this planning process where we move so far along and then we hear from the community, get the feedback, and then kind of move the string along a little bit further. So it sounds like we already kind of planned for this, right? It's just a matter of when do we get the feedback from the community.
I would agree. At the next meeting where a lot of this is discussed, it allows for that feedback, and some of it being available that night, and others, and probably more of others, through the different accesses that we're allowing them to provide us feedback to. And I think it's good to highlight that. In regards to David's comment of us starting this and nobody knows, I think Jeff has said it a couple times in several of our meetings of how we're starting it in our plan commission meetings. I don't know if there's anything out on the website that states it, but I'm sure there's some information on the website that it's been started again. So it's not a secret to where we try to quietly start these again so that we can move it in a direction before we're ready for public input. I've always welcomed public input at any part of it. And I'm still receiving it, like I said, now, either through discussions of people that I meet or through the emails that they've been sending me. So it's pretty much an open format right now, just because it's been ongoing for over a year. But I think some people are becoming more aware that those discussions are occurring, and that we're trying to move it in a direction for a scheduled conclusion, because we realize that we're behind.
Yeah, I would tend to agree that we probably should have some sort of formal announcement of us restarting if not simply to do that as part of our advertising for the next community workshop. You know, for all intents and purposes, a lot of us have gone into hiding over the last year, and so this process is probably the last thing on people's minds. And without seeing the sort of banners and things that we've had at various events and out on the street, I think it's difficult to expect people to kind of keep in mind that there's this process going on that they might want to be involved in without us nudging them in some formal way every now and then, particularly in light of what's happened over the last year with COVID and everything. So I will take that to heart, and we'll talk about trying to get out some more of a formal announcement about restarting. Or we're still involved in the process. We haven't gone away. We're just a little bit harder to find, and we're going to make that right as we go forward. So.
Okay, with that then, public input or public appearance? Is anybody else online or wishing to comment or add a comment to public input or public appearance?
Dean, I just want to address, David called me out because I'm just a village resident with nothing better to do on a Monday night. So but I thought I should at least address you since you called me out like that.
I'm sorry, Jim. I know you're in development. I thought you might want something, so thought I'd reach out to you.
Not yet, but thanks for asking.
Just interested. Thank you. Anyone else for public input or public appearance at this time? If not, we can go on to the next item, which is approval of minutes from the January 11th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? Discussion? That's interesting. If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the next item on the agenda, which is new business.
Dean, could I jump in here for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
As we discussed at our last meeting, when we were looking at the land use scenario for the Holy Hill Road corridor, the gateway area, we were focusing in on some of the environmental features and the trails that were in there. And make a long story short, the thought was that it would probably be appropriate and good timing to have a presentation summarizing the current status of the open space and recreation plan for the village. And with that, we've asked, since Grafe is working on that with us, it's also timely. But we also have Mark Schrader here, our Park and Recreation Director, to give us a tag team summary presentation on the current planning effort for the park and open space plan. So with that, Mark, if you want to say a few things, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation to join tonight. As you know, we've been working kind of parallel to the comprehensive plan. We've been working kind of starting and stopping with the environment that we've been in, but we've been working on it really with the Grafe team for about a year now. We had an opportunity to update the Park and Recreation Commission last Wednesday night. It had been a while since we had really delved into it in a working type meeting, so that was a good meeting. Just, I guess, to highlight a few things, and certainly Craig can add to the discussion, but one of the things I wanted to mention is the community engagement that we've been involved in the last year. And I know you're very well aware of the first part of it, and that was the 2050 comprehensive plan survey that was done, I think it was the fall of 19. Where does time go? But there were some questions in there that related to parks and open space and trying to, gain some of the or gather some of the feedback from the community. I know Emily and Jeff had gone through that at a meeting. I don't remember exactly when, but they had given you the results of some of those comments as part of that 2050 plan. We also had about a little over a year ago, we had a park planning open house that was held over at the Germantown Senior Center. We had, I'm just going to guess, 40 plus people that attended that, stopped in and gave their feedback. We used some, with Graves' help, we used some inspiration boards, some interactive mapping, some live digital polling. We heard some of the same common themes. And then the last, I guess the most recent public input we had was at the end of last October, and we had virtual stakeholder meetings. So these were a smaller group of residents in the 6 to 8 in number. We had some of the sports organizations, we had some community organizations, and then we just had some families, some parents and families give us some of the feedback. So again, I'll just briefly mention some of the focus areas that we heard, and these rang out again in that 2050 survey. We heard things such as trails and connectivity was very important. We heard restrooms. We heard outdoor aquatic, I'll just say experience, because that could be, some people were thinking that was an aquatic center. Some people were thinking a splash pad. We also heard about canoe kayak launch, and that I think had to do with the Menominee River corridor. We heard about a youth sports complex from some of the groups. And I guess last but not least, we heard about the idea of beer garden and concessions, which perhaps fitting for Germantown. But so that was some of the feedback that we had gotten. That's summarized in the plan, and I think it's page 51 through 54. A lot of the last year, we've been working with Grafe to update the village profile, to update the park and recreation inventory. One thing I do want to mention when it comes to facility standards, the prior plans have been kind of more, prior versions have been tied more to a standard, looking at a national standard in regard to acreage, in regard to facilities, such as, one for every 10,000 people, you need X number of acres of parks. This plan is kind of branching off from that. More and more of these comprehensive plans don't tie it to a one-size-fits-all national standard, but instead looks at what are your residents telling us that they feel we need for the community in regard to parks and open space. So that you'll see in there. There's a section that talks a little bit more specifically about trails and connectivity, including the Menominee River potential opportunities there. That was a theme back in 2015 that I'm sure Tony can remember when he was working with the commission. The last things I guess I'll just kind of maybe end with, we spent most of our time talking about chapters 5 and 6. Those were chapter 5 are the goals and objectives. Those we actually approved back in last March, but we had never really prioritized those. And I guess we wanted some input from the residents before looking to try to prioritize those. I think the ones, if you look in that chapter, all the items, the priorities, the feedback on focus areas, they all kind of fall under those. And then we just started getting into the capital recommendations and looking at, yes, this is a 5-year plan, but are there some things we should make note of for beyond 5 years? 5 years can be a short time period when it comes to capital recommendations. So, Craig, Danya, anything else I missed, or we can try to answer your questions? We're doing pretty. I think we're doing pretty well. It's been a good, enjoyed working with Grafe to assist us on this. So.
Thanks, Mark. This is Craig Heemner with Grafe. I thought that summary was perfect, and I don't really have anything to add. And maybe we'll just open it back up to the Plan Commission with any specific questions for those who were able to read through the draft that was part of your packet tonight.
No, the only questions that I had received from residents is they weren't as familiar with the history of Green Seams and what Green Seams has done within our community over the last 5, 10, or 15 years. And once familiarized with the lands that they do have under management, specifically more over by Wilderness Park, then the other question becomes, when is that accessible to us? So they know that those have been under control from Green Seams for a while. They've been doing some repurposing, replanting, and kind of reshaping of the land to allow it to do what they want it to do. But then, the long-term goal always was to have that community return back so that we could use it for low-impact recreational activities. And the question always is, when will that happen?
Yeah, that's a great comment. Allow me just to share my screen maybe. And can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I wanted to make sure there wasn't a delay. In the appendix of the Corp plan, you'll see one specific item which is related to the Menominee River Trail implementation, I'll call it. And really, within the next 5 years, there's several kind of planning specific recommendations that we have, one of them being really a trail master plan. And part of that includes, in the red here, is Wilderness Park, which basically is inaccessible, as Dean mentioned. So part of this trail implementation plan is how do we start to gain access to the Menominee River and its headwaters, and also to specifically Wilderness Park, potentially gain access to pursue specific grants that can help implement some of these access points to these different areas. So within the next 5 years, a big part or push is going to be to do more detailed studies and investigation for how to start to implement some of these higher level recommendations.
I remember from my time on the Park and Rec Commission, we looked at the Green Seams problem, the Green Seams properties, and they were relatively intractable in our ability to do anything with them. I mean, you couldn't even put a fence on those properties. I think you can put a small unpaved parking lot of X square feet per 40 acres or something. But other than that, I think you might be able to cut paths in there and maybe put, permeable, I don't know, bark or mulch down, maybe. But other than that, it was like, nope, can't do anything with it. You're welcome to recommend whatever you want, but you can't do anything. They were militant about it. And I don't know, to me, it doesn't make any sense to ever accept those properties into the village of Germantown, as title, because at that point they become a liability. If they're just going to let them go to pot with invasive species and stuff, then it's the village's responsibility to clean up those properties, or at least get the buckthorn out and whatever. So I don't know why we'd want the liability without any of the asset.
It's not a bad point, but I think there still is some opportunity for trails at the very least, Tony, for low impact recreation. I wouldn't say it would go along the lines of ATV trails, but it could be used for cross country skiing. It could be used for snowshoeing. It could be used possibly for mountain biking, depending on what type of path you put in there. But you're right. They are very limiting into what you can do and how you can use it, and then what types of things you can put in on it. And a lot of it is non-structured. And they're not looking for you to put in any hard packed surfaces of any kind, because they really want the land to continue to do the reason that they purchased it for, which was to absorb water and kind of hold water upstream so they don't have to manage it downstream. But I think if we start to push a little bit harder, and if we can get the community to come with us and push too, that maybe some things will get loosened up and we'll have a little bit more opportunity for use, and hopefully an extended use that wouldn't just be, oh, isn't it pretty, and don't touch it though because we don't want you to break it, kind of a situation.
So Craig, I have a question.
Yes.
With this graphic, is this intended to show potential parcels for acquisition by the village?
Not necessarily. So this is an exhibit that shows the Menominee River and the properties that basically overlap and touch that. So as a starting point with a more detailed study would be, okay, how can the village allow for public access to the Menominee River? And that can be through different agreements with property owners. It could be actual acquisition, if that makes sense, but it isn't always a acquisition need. It's more of a how do we just maintain access to? And it may not be possible along the entire corridor, but part of this ongoing implementation plan is to prioritize, where are the critical areas that we for sure want and need to have public access that makes the most sense. Good question. The one other thing, if I can, I just wanted to pull up the map of our trail-wide system that's part of this plan. And I think it's good for the Plan Commission to be aware of. So this map right here, let me just go to one-page view. And it's not important to see specifics here, but the key for a Plan Commission really to help implement your village-wide trails is now that there's this vision for where potential trails can occur. When private development comes forward before the Plan Commission, before the village board, utilizing this map and any private property that's adjacent to environmental corridors and these trails, there really needs to be an understanding from the beginning that a certain strip of land be dedicated as an access easement for public trail usage. This is something that is not uncommon that developers see all the time, and oftentimes as part of the agreement, it's also paid for by the private developer as well. So it's a way to incrementally implement your trail system without the village being solely responsible for going in and implementing the entire thing. The village may still spearhead some portions, but just as a Plan Commission, that should be something you're aware of with private development.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On this graphic, all the dashed lines of various colors represent potential or future paths or side paths, paved shoulders, what have you. Mm-hmm. And they are generally consistent with road corridors. Is it the intention that the path or side path would be on just one side of a road corridor or possibly on both? And is there something further in the plan that further details that, whether it's on one side or both, and if it's one side, which side, so that we have a little bit firmer direction as to when to require or how or when to require from developers that sort of commitment or right of way for those trails?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the base of this map was taken in tandem with Washington County's recent bike and ped countywide plan. So a lot of the base data is taken from those recommendations. And what I would say is it's not necessarily a same solution for every single road. And that's dependent on, just like you said, existing right of way, existing facilities that maybe just need to be improved or expanded upon. So without going into detail, there are different facilities for each roadway. The ideal solution a lot of times is to have access on both sides of the road, but that isn't feasible or possible for different situations as well. So, I can't give you a specific without kind of going into detail, but the plan does, include different images and examples for different types of paths, and again, which roads make the most sense at this point in time in the village.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, anything else to bring to our attention or discuss in regards to the Park and Rec Committee and what you've been talking about as far as future parks and land use within the village?
No, I guess just to say that, we're going to be working on this over the next couple of months, kind of fine tuning the priorities and some capital recommendations. But it's my understanding that we would be bringing this back to the Plan Commission and, of course, the village board at a to be determined date in the future. So, but other than that, I guess there's nothing else to share right at this time.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this forward and also for giving us the background information from your committee or from the committee so that we've got that as part of our input as we look at the 2050 plan. And yeah, it does seem like a long time ago we had that meeting at the senior center, but it's nice to get it back into discussions and into consideration, knowing that it's an integral part of this plan going forward.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Jeff, before we go into new business? Okay, then we'll go into new business item A, Community Development Department Future Land Use Discussion for Neighborhoods, Districts, Corridors as part of the Germantown 2050 Comprehensive Plan. You want to start kicking it off, or is Craig going to kick it off, or perhaps other members from Grafe have something to start for this item? I'll
say a few words. At our last meeting, Grafe presented some land use scenarios that they developed for the Gateway area, and we discussed those and gave some feedback, some suggestions on how they might be revised and improved to address some of the concerns that were raised by the Plan Commission members, all with the goal in mind of trying to put together a potential set of parameters for guiding future land use and development in that particular district. Grafe has gone back and made some revisions to those scenarios, and we'll be presenting and talking about those tonight. But also, we are moving on to our Main Street area, our central core area of the village, where Grafe has put together some more detailed information concerning that district as well. So with that, I'll turn things over to Craig and Danya for their presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. We'll start with the update to the Holy Hill Gateway Park area. And similar to last time, the same as last time, we have two alternatives for this large development area. And they're essentially the same future land use opportunities for the majority of the area, with the exception of the northeast portion of Holy Hill Road and Goldendale Road having kind of two different alternatives, the large area of land that's basically completely undeveloped right now. But from an overall sense, what you see along the freeway is an orangish red color identified as mixed commercial. There was some discussion last month, I believe. Previously, it was listed just commercial, but the idea that this could be a mixture of uses, whether that's industrial with commercial or even potentially mixed use residential, as long as there still is some commercial use, would be within this orange red color. Moving east, you see a brownish color, which is representative of heavy industrial area. And this is inclusive of the majority of the development that's already occurring north of Holy Hill Road. And then as you continue to transition to the east, in this alternative one, you can see the large tract of land in the light pink color is representative of a lighter industrial. And what that light industrial represents versus the heavy industrial is potentially specifically the types of uses, but also potentially the building design and site design being a little bit more smaller or granular in nature, that molds itself and blends itself more into the rural development area of the village itself. So I'll toggle from alternative one, if you kind of keep an eye on this northeast portion of Holy Hill and Goldendale. Alternative two, based off of the feedback that we heard last month from the Plan Commission, was instead of this entire area being industrial, does it make sense to have more of a transition of land use to the existing rural residential area outside of this project area? So what you'll see here is a breakdown of light industrial again, but then a ring more or less of medium density future residential that would again serve as a buffer to the existing rural residential within the community. And what this split screen is showing on the left is just kind of the general color designations for different future land use. And on the right is an update to our more detailed residential conservation subdivision lot design. So what you'll see, similar to last time, but a little bit of difference as you see conservation subdivisions, which really stress every lot having access to a communal open space, green space as part of the amenity and attraction for these residences. So both of these areas here adjacent to Fond du Lac Avenue, you see residential here, and then to the south again, just north of the existing Isabel Farms Drive, you see two different conservation subdivisions that again serve as a sort of land use buffer to the existing residential. So those are the two exhibits for the gateway and updates since our last plan. And I'll maybe stop there and ask for questions or feedback.
Anybody have anything for input, comments, concerns, questions?
I'll say that I think you picked up the essence of what I was looking for. I think we get a step down in density before we go out into the real rural area east of 145. Specific transition between Isabel Farms and anything else that'll come with an actual developer stepping forward. So I'm good with where you went with this. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments, and I apologize for not bringing this up sooner. But as I look at the residential area A, one of the things that comes to mind, and one of my issues that I see that we need to deal with as we talk about expanding the industrial and other non-residential areas around the interchange is opportunity to move traffic in as many different directions as possible and not try and funnel it all through a couple of pinch points that we know exist today and that would only get worse if traffic increases. And that's the Five Corners area at Holy Hill and 145, as well as down Goldendale Road and Freistadt. On the right-hand graphic with the residential area, in the previous alternative, we had essentially Rockfield was being extended all the way over to intersect with 145 and giving that additional access way in and out of the industrial area or to and from the industrial area without having to go to the Holy Hill Road interchange or south. And with this scenario, that is sort of cut off and traffic is sent back to Holy Hill Road. And I'm wondering, is there a way to try and accommodate a road connection to 145 north of Holy Hill Road so that we don't have some of that industrial traffic that may be coming from West Bend or off the interstate to the north, having to go all the way down to Holy Hill Road and go through that busy intersection or that atrocious intersection, make a right turn to head on out?
Which way are you trying to get the industrial traffic to go to?
I'm trying to create another alternative to between Goldendale and 145. Essentially, if you were to run Rockfield over due east from Goldendale to 145.
So if you can go northbound on Goldendale to pick up 5, right where the cursor is now.
Yeah, and that's not the best intersection.
Well, is it better than Five Corners? And see, from my
Slightly
perspective,
better.
from my perspective, I don't want industrial traffic going through a residential area.
No, I understand, and I
Yeah.
agree with you there. I'm just, since this is the first attempt at trying to fill in that buffer area that you suggested with residential, I'm seeing and focusing in on the circulation pattern here, and that road connection of Rockfield extension over to 145 is now gone, and I'm just wondering if that's something we need to try and put back in some fashion, maybe on the edge of the residential area, or maybe we don't need it at all. But
Yeah, I would say we don't need it at all, but I'll open my mind to it. The commercial traffic, where are we trying to get them to? Are we trying to get them east to Mequon and 43, or are we trying to get them on 141?
well, ideally, they could be going both. I mean, let's look at the residential traffic we're now creating by in this buffer area. They want to get to the interstate.
Yep.
Where are they going to go? They got to jump out onto 145 and go down to the five corners and turn right. Now, right turn is fine, but the intersection as a whole is terrible.
Yeah.
So there's not even a back door for them unless they want to go north on 145 and head all the way up to get on, um, you know, at Pioneer Road, essentially.
Sure. So if the master plan is being presented here of that subdivision, if we had a second road that would connect down to Holy Hill Road in that green area, right where the cursor is, yeah, if that were to connect through, then I wouldn't have to go out onto 145. And then you have your back way in. This is done in a bunch of cul-de-sacs and dead ends, whereas realistically, internal roadway should go from north end of this down to south end of this, so I wouldn't have to go on 145 to get onto Holy Hill Road.
Yeah, I like the comments and where this is coming from, and Jeff, to address your initial point, it was an intentional design. Thinking that the truck traffic primarily would be coming from I-41, and if it did come from the north, that they would take Goldendale. But to Mr. Baum's comments, I think it definitely does make sense, and likely what we're showing here, the number of access points on Fond du Lac. Probably shouldn't be shown that many as well. So, I like the idea of an exit path, connecting from Fond du Lac down to Holy Hill for these residents as well.
Yeah, where you got the southern U-shaped grouping of houses, that's right at the transition between 55 and 35.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want anything coming out there because there's a lot of stuff happening there.
Agreed. Yep.
So if you flip that over and connect the road down to Holy Hill, that's more in line with what should happen. Then you're connecting to Holy Hill away from the five corners. You've got multiple places. You can go to the north and go northbound. You can come to the south and go east or west or south.
Any other comments or questions on the revisions since last month?
What's jutting out in the middle of the industrial area?
Yeah, so the light green is representative of existing natural features. So this is a high point, actually, if you would extend Rockfield of this entire site, and then it slopes down to Holy Hill and slopes down again to the north. And right in the middle is a large upland woodlands area that you see right in the middle. And then also a little bit further to the east along 45 has some wooded areas as well as part of a private residence right now. And then the darker green is proposed natural corridors that would be inclusive of both stormwater facilities and more communal open space again.
Okay, thank you.
Concerns
Anyone
or
else?
thoughts about that, Dean? You know, in an
I
industrial
was gonna-
park, I wouldn't be, if I'm creating all this new green space, I'm less concerned about holding on to that green space if we need more industrial. There's a lot of ifs there.
Yeah, I'm more curious about cutting off the town of Germantown from accessing to the north or to the west, because you're pretty much stopping that road.
Which
And the town of Germantown to the east, now they got to drop down one way or another, where they're used to Rockfield Road as a way out.
Yeah, but would they? I think they would be. They would prefer cutting off all the truck traffic because I know that subdivision at Goldendale and Freistadt would love to cut off the truck traffic.
Well, because if you look at where the road is now and how it stops at 145 and it stops at Division, is that Division?
Golden
Maple.
Maple.
or Maple, sorry.
It looks like it was, at one time planned to come through as a way to go east and west, a little bit further north up. Now you're definitely setting that pattern to say, no, we're going to stop it. And you're going to always have to drop down or up to get back to the freeway. So you are creating a little bit more traffic down to the five corners a little bit. And at the same time, if you don't give an access through that neighborhood, which some of the people will be taking, if you've got a quick way through that neighborhood, you're going to create more traffic through a residential just trying to get down and out to 41.
Well, I'm not sure I want to micromanage that at this point.
I don't either. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, we can argue the validity of roadways going through here, but until a developer comes through with actual plans,
It is a big block from Holy Hill all the way up to Cedar Lane there. That's pretty open.
Yeah, and I think what, I'd want to do as your consultant is work with our transportation engineers as well. And obviously with your public works and engineering staff, understand their concerns. This is a large area. So I think there really should be a village recommendation and vision for what infrastructure is needed and makes the most sense. And then developers can use that information. They may disagree and maybe there's an agreement, but I think we should look at what from an engineering standpoint is needed and also from a planning development.
so does Rockfield Road actually go through? Put that back up, Jeff.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Right
it doesn't
now,
go through. Sorry. No, it doesn't go through.
So
It stops.
yeah,
Stops right over by Thomas Bar and Grill.
yeah. So at Goldendale, I got an extension of what is that, Bonniewell on the west?
Honeywell's up north of
Bonniewell
Rockford,
that stops at Goldendale,
right?
and I got Rockfield that stops just beyond Goldendale and doesn't go through to 145.
Right. East of Goldendale, this is just like a gravel drive, a farm access.
Drive, yeah. So there really currently today there is no connection between Goldendale and 145 north of Holy Hill.
Right.
Whether it's Bonniewell that comes back through or Rockfield, it just seems logical that we should try and plan for one of those to go across.
Yeah, and I would say take Bonniewell through because that's on the north end and that is north of residential. And what I had talked about last time is the north end of this all in the town of Germantown being additional residential. So there, Bonniewell makes sense to connect through.
There's something there though. When you look at Google Maps, it shows something darker in that area. As
That's what Jeff got up is Google
east to 145. And I don't know what that is.
For Bonniewell?
Yeah, it stops at of course, County Y, which is Maple, and then it has a darker area that's kind of around where Bonniewell ends and then goes over to 145 and then kind of stops along 145. So it's got to be that tree line then is what they're showing.
Oh,
That's
up
not,
there.
no, that's just tree line?
Yeah.
Go to the right. Show more of the right. Keep going. There you go. Nope, the other
Yeah,
way.
that's kind of the pattern they show is the trees. All right, that's what they're showing.
Yeah, and that's the extension of Bonniewell is a very lowland area as well.
Yeah, it's all swampy in through here.
Yep, there's a lot of environmental wetland floodplain corridors as well.
Okay.
I
Anyone
wouldn't
have
have
other questions?
a problem with Bonniewell going through as an extension of the residential. I'm trying to keep the heavy traffic and the trucks away from the residential.
No, I think well, as you look at that, I'm not against the plan of surrounding it with the neighborhood as it shows, but long-term planning, 5 or more years, you will have to do something with Five Corners.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is that on the slate of planning studies? I know it's a state. I feel like I remember hearing that from my engineering staff, but I could be mistaken.
Fond du Lac Avenue would be state.
State. But I thought for some reason that was on the state's radar for doing a study, but I may be misspeaking on that.
Well, all they've been doing lately is just reconstruction of the existing 2 lanes and some shouldering, widening some shoulders, basically repaving projects.
This is Steve Krecklow. I can just chime in and say that the last thing we had heard from the state DOT is they were looking at the intersection of Fond du Lac and Division, but at this point we haven't heard anything about them looking at Five Corners at all.
Put a roundabout in it.
There's no room. You'd be taking about 5 buildings with it, including the church.
Great. Any other comments on Holy Hill Gateway? Otherwise, we also have the Village Center that we'd like to introduce some ideas for.
I want some input from Mr. Kimmler because this is right in your backyard. Some thoughts that you've got with the surrounding neighborhood and its impact to your neighborhood.
It's tough to say. I mean, for me personally, not as a plan commission member, it's pretty dense. I think for the residential, I'm glad moving forward from the last plan that you are making that transition as you're going from west to east, kind of making it into the industrial area. But I guess my concerns are still, I don't understand what the lighter industrial will kind of look like. I still don't have a good idea of that. And then, that's like I still say the Isabel Farm subdivision is a 5-acre country estate type neighborhood, and then butting up to that you have very small lots, and it doesn't look like on the graphic a ton of open space. And then if you also look down there by the Nyland subdivision, you're basically kind of surrounding that also with some sort of industrial. So I don't know how those residents in that area are going to feel about that, expanding industrial over there. And then I haven't got out and talked to my neighbors about how they feel about expanding the industrial in the area, but I know they favor residential over industrial.
Thank you for that. Can you go back to the plan previous, just the AB thing again? Can you flip back to the other one that showed the more industrial and then had yeah. See, I think that's it's less attractive, even though I like the traffic pattern. how it impacts the surrounding though to the south is more so. It's almost too much. Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Any other final comments?
I was just going to add to what Matt had. If you look at the kind of that sawtooth area in Goldendale, Matt, is that what you're talking about? Where you have the existing subdivisions down there, and right across the street you're going to have light industrial?
Yeah, right where that cursor is down there. Yeah, there's a subdivision there.
Yeah.
And then to the right of that is where JW Speaker is. But yeah, there's a subdivision there. There's some old like farm type houses on the corner of Goldendale and Frystead and stuff. So quite a bit of residential down there. That's where St. Boniface is.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would agree with that. That area there needs a little bit of work unless we're relying on setbacks and berms or something. But just plopping light industrial right across the street from those folks is going to be a rude awakening.
Isn't it some of that just a Strauss farm, Jeff?
The Stout Farm, yes.
The Stout farm, a lot of it right there.
Yeah, pretty much everything from the railroad track down south to Frystadt is part of the Stout Farm. There's a parcel close to the railroad track that's owned by an individual, but that's all the Stout Farm right along Goldendale from Frystadt north to the railroad.
Which he's not really looking to budge in any way from the last time that I talked to him. That farm has been in his family for 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah, it's the Stout Farm on the west side of the road. It's a subdivision on the east side of the road. I mean, and then JW Speaker as well, but.
Right.
I'm going to share my screen because I've got that graphic up. So yeah, the Stout Farm runs all the way through here.
We're dead.
Did his brother own land that's on the other side of the railroad track or near it? I thought his brother had some land up there.
James Stout owns right along Goldendale, and his brother owns land right next door to the west. And then there's another property owner. I forget her name. She owns about 60 to 80 acres through here. And then everything else is either DJ Frank or like a holding company for DJ Frank. And then way up by the railroad, the wooded area is the storage company. They own some land on the south side of the railroad.
Okay, thank you.
I would, I guess, ask and be curious, land commissioners, this specific area, your future land use map just has this as what was kind of just the present rural land, kind of 5-acre lots. And the future kind of land use that we're discussing here, is a change, is a light industrial. And that's to kind of look at this larger area as a potential, future industrial expansion of the business park. But, does it make sense to be a different land use here that you as commissioners think would be more suitable? Medium density residential as well. Would you want to see additional conservation subdivisions at this corner? Just curious, anyone's thoughts on that?
Well, at the last time we talked about it, I thought some of that area over by the interstate would be more like you were talking about some areas in Greenfield and Menominee Falls, something like that, where there is residential mixed with commercial, multiple uses in there. And then if that was near closer to the interstate, the freeway, as you transition away from there, you could go into, more dense residential into maybe as you get further over a conservation type subdivision, and I don't know if that makes sense or not. I think for that to work, you definitely have to have a frontage road that goes from Frystead to Holy Hill to take care of some of that traffic. But
I think that's always been part of the plan of the frontage road between Frystead and Holy Hill, and then possibly another one going from Holy Hill up towards the next one up, which is
Honeywell.
Bonnewell. And then you could open that up for mixed use or whether it be commercial and maybe some residential, a little bit more dense, or possibly mixed in with, like you have at the Whitestone Station, like you have at the 84th Street, like you have in Thiensville. They have their community center, their mixed use in the middle, but they anchor the two ends with multifamily, the two outside of that box.
Yeah, so for me, if that's what you're thinking of is being in part of this area, then it seems like you wouldn't put in that corner down there on Freisted and Goldendale industrial again. It would be more suitable with that type of development.
But you got to go south of Freisted. Pan down a little bit, Jeff. Go south of Freisted. What is all that?
Well, this is the insurance company owns all this land here.
Yep. And I got some private homes along Goldendale. What's that German Learning Center building there?
There's the daycare. This is all swampy. This is all wet and swampy. All of this is wet.
Yeah, it's pretty much all lowland area, and in your current future land use map, it's designated anything touching the freeway as commercial. And then medium density residential is kind of the existing residences that you see there.
Yeah, so for northwest corner of Goldendale and Freistad, it's a transition area between high density industrial. Well, you got the mixed use at the road, then you can go some form of industrial, either high or medium, and then you could do some type of residential at the corner. So if you wanted to do a more dense residential here to transition to the what are those 1 acre lots at best?
They're like
So I could see this going, I could see this corner going high density residential to get into medium industrial to then blend into interstate frontage mixed use.
So you're talking about maybe cutting the corner where it's right in through here and redeveloping with a higher density residential?
I could see it going either way. If a developer was to come to me and say, I want to put mixed use at the interstate, high density industrial in the center, and then low density at the intersection here, I could see that. If somebody were to come and say, I want to put high density residential at this corner, then medium, then the highway mixed use, I could see that too. I could see it going either way. So to put something on a plan, I'd leave it the way we have it right now and wait for somebody to come forward with what they would want to do.
And then change all the zoning based on.
Are you changing the zoning today?
No, we're not changing zoning. It's just the plan. You would have to change the land use plan.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
David, you're suggesting leaving everything south of the railroad, east of 41, north of Freistadt, and west of Goldendale, leave it designated on the new plan the same way it's designated on the old plan?
No, what I'm saying is the way Craig has coded today, I would leave it like that.
All right, I'm going to jump out of this aerial. Could you bring up that graphic, Craig?
Yep. So yeah, again, the orange is kind of mixed commercial, brown, heavy industrial, thinking that would be kind of a continuation along this new frontage road.
Section?
Yep. And then the light pink is lighter industrial that we're showing right now.
Okay, so if I were to change this, I can accept this to stay as is, but in another scenario, I would take the beige center section and turn that pink, but then this pink section turn to a higher density residential. Is that the yellow or is that another color?
Yellow.
It's subtle change. It's so subtle that I can't go either way. So for today, I'd leave it as is and let's wait for feedback.
Yeah, and I would make that purple area a conservation subdivision because it would kind of continue what you have across the street to the east. And then, I mean, it's a good spot for residential subdivision as well because you're right next to a park, you're right next to a school, and you're right next to a church.
And I can be fine with that too. What do we need more of? Industrial or residential?
I think in that corner it's residential because then you don't have as much road impact for trucks. You could build the roads bigger to the backside of that and maybe through your frontage than you do at that corner. You're very limited there at Goldendale and Freistadt because everybody's pretty tight there. Whereas if you went towards the freeway or built the frontage road to the backside of that and still kept it mixed use, you could widen that to help offset some of the industrial traffic to go up or down towards Lannon, and then keep it away from that residential and keep it from going east.
I can see that happening. So if you want to change those colors around for the next plan, I'm fine with that. I can support it.
Ooh. What do you like or don't like the road patterns shown?
I don't. I'm not concerned about them at this point.
I would say, just to comment on that, all road patterns obviously have some flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, the intent again was to lay them out in a way that not only serves as circulation, but a little bit more of a place-based kind of identity. Now, will it actually be that there's kind of a loop road around this? You know, depends on, again, what the development is going to be. And you maybe only see one of them, you know, gaining access to different sites.
Again, if that tan section turns to pink and is light industrial, I don't want industrial having roads going through a residential subdivision.
Yep.
So I would not connect out the Goldendale. In this case, it makes sense because it's heavy industrial next to light industrial going out to an access road.
So,
But if you're making the pink residential, no.
so along the lines of mixed use and possibly multifamily up along that 41 corridor, what property would be best designated for a plan like that? The biggest block that you see now coming from Railroad Corridor up or further north of Holy Hill Road?
Yeah, so I did a kind of quick, just depth-wise, you know, Whitestone Station would fit within more or less this corridor north of Holy Hill Road.
Would fit or would not fit?
It would.
Okay.
There's some massaging, you know, that happens in thicker parts, but to get a sense of scale, I mean, this is a large tract of land that allows for that potential. I think that's very attractive on the north end, but you know, I think there's more land and flexibility, a little bit more constraints from an environmental standpoint. So, you know, it really could happen on either or.
Yeah, and the Retzloff Road there, after it crosses the
I don't think
railroad
it says
track-
that.
It says
think it says that
Retzloff Way.
So it could actually curve around and go on the east side of that orange blob instead of on the west side of it. So you have all that contiguous orange instead of a road going through it.
Right.
But those are refinements.
Yeah, and I think if there's going to be the light industrial up there, you know, that would be that traffic would probably go come out to that frontage road, and then if there's residential traffic, it would come out to maybe Freistadt Road, and not
If you
go to the frontage road.
If you're going to create a destination of that kind, is it used as a stop there and that's it, or is there a way to draw people to and through more into Germantown? Because if you're putting it against the freeway there, then it's a on and off situation. But is there any way to build it so that it draws to and through?
Yeah, I think that's
you're never going to get that.
to some degree, it's its own, destination. But I think the big part of these successful centers that you see is their connection to regional trails, Mequon Town Center, and the trails that run through the area of the bug line that gets close with Whitestone Station. Drexel Town Square has the Oak Leaf Trail. So for Germantown, it would be within your environmental corridors. How do we create this loop system that connects down to the Menominee River and brings you into the village center? So I think it's definitely a potential to get a trail network to connect this development.
The difficulty you'll have is connecting this warm, welcoming, inviting orange area, having to get it through the industrial park to get over to downtown. The only real good connection is along Freistadt. It's not as if we can take it over to the school and then go across the golf course. It's got to go along Freistadt.
No, but I like the idea of tying it to a path system because that's where someone like Craig had stated, some of the more successful ones are tied to something that brings those people that are looking for either pedestrian or bicycle path.
Is that not the pathway?
To end up somewhere and then kind of turn back through,
Yeah, is that not the pathway along the railroad track there?
Right, that's the dotted line, right?
Yeah.
Which we need to keep in mind is predominantly MMSD property that, given our earlier discussion, may be a little bit difficult to put any sort of hard packed or paved trail through. But it's not to say we couldn't go on the south side of the railroad and come back around.
Mm-hmm. How busy is that railroad corridor?
One or two trains a day.
Okay. So it's nothing that they're giving up yet for possible pathway down the 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Right.
Not yet, but if we're going to put industrial right next to it, there'll be opportunities we'll be creating for some rail sidings, which may increase the traffic. So I don't know if that's counterproductive or what, but something to keep in mind.
Okay. Anything else with this corridor, or are we ready to go to the main street? Okay. Next one.
Great. So the next 6 slides or so focus on our village center. And what we tried to do is incorporate previous planning studies that focused on connections, your Connecting Saxony document that was done by an outside, I believe it was, who was it, Jeff? Federal group?
Was it EPA?
EPA, thank you.
EPA technical assistance. Some consulting firms from across the United States came together here in Germantown for a week.
Perfect, thank you. So what the first several exhibits, if you looked at, focus on both Main Street and Mequon Road, and then the north-south connections. And what the key recommendations in the report obviously were different type of bike and ped connections, but also improvements to the cross sections of each of these streets. So there's no major change, and I'll maybe wait to go into detail for kind of the different interventions, but they really are focused on connecting Mequon Road to Main Street and getting kind of cross movement back and forth, and also from existing residents to the different destinations. What you will see in all these exhibits are kind of these orangish red circles identified as redevelopment nodes. And a good number of those are really focused along Mequon Road, with the thought that moving forward, is there a Mequon Town Center-like implementation that essentially is a 4-acre size development where you could get one or two existing property owners to basically come to an agreement and say they'd be open to redevelopment, either for themselves or sell, to see more of a destination, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use type of ground floor commercial with residential above intervention. So as we go through here, the first couple pages just kind of identify the different, again, vehicular interventions that were identified as part of the Connecting Saxony Village. And then when we get into this page 4, you'll see a little bit new here, the recommendations for some off-street multi-use trails, and one of them being within the Blackstone Creek property, which I'll show a drawing of in a minute here. And this trail, it's a fancy urban design name called an allée, but it's essentially a promenade trail of trees that's a formal connection from Mequon Road north to different park and recreation elements along Main Street. And then you'll see secondary trails, which there already are some existing either paved or informal paths adjacent to the existing residents. But the key that we want to stress as part of this plan is how to get those existing residences connected into this network of public space and destinations. So looking at one of these development nodes, this is at the intersection of Division and Mequon Road. And this area within the existing Blackstone Creek has multiple different development proposals. But what this design drawing was meant to emphasize is kind of three things. One, that along Mequon Road and Division Road, there's this mixed use destination with the potential for commercial ground level uses with residential above. And as part of that commercial use, that there's highly designed pedestrian spaces, whether that's outdoor seating for restaurants or potentially even a splash pad or ice rink as part of a commercial joint private public venture. Transitioning north then, you see along the right east side property line is this promenade trail space. And then moving to the west, you see a row of different buildings that we've identified as potential townhomes. You can see the different images here on the bottom that reflect some of the design character that we think would be appropriate from a density standpoint. And then transitioning along the outskirts here is the idea of potentially some duplex or single family lots that would then transition into more of the open space recreation facilities to be determined for the remainder of this land. So again, from the overall development, what you'll see is from south to north, mixed use, transition to residential townhomes, and then all the way to the north, connecting to Main Street, the former recycling center becomes kind of a terminus of both residential and potentially even recreation uses, pavilion or potentially even a nature center. So I'll maybe stop there before we have one other intersection that shows some design interventions. Let's pause here and answer any questions that people have.
Any questions?
If I could sum this up, it's the impetus of this plan is to get essentially more traffic to Main Street, more visibility by bringing in more people. I mean, I think about when I moved to Germantown 20 years ago, I think it took me a year to discover Main Street.
That's true.
It's just
true.
because it's a neat place, but unless you just kind of stumble over it, you don't really know it's there. So I kind of like this plan because I think that's the focus of it is again, capitalizing on it by bringing more traffic and more visibility to it, because you can't move Main Street, and Mequon Road, unfortunately, sucks up all the traffic around it. So I like the idea of more access.
Right, and that was the whole point of the connectivity study that was done for us by the EPA planning staff. And I think it was a good product, and I think we, as Craig has indicated, building off of that and incorporating that into our 2050 plan makes a lot of sense. It really does. And with regard to this and other potential redevelopment nodes, I think it's important that we understand that, these are just one particular or one possible alternative and concept for the type and density of development that may take place. Depending upon financing and other issues involved, we could have higher density and different types of units across these particular properties that we're looking at for potential redevelopment.
This isn't the first time we've seen a plan like this along this area. Other ones that have been proposed in the past, whether it be a retirement community that was proposed at one time, or even when was a fiduciary came through and had something that was similar, but also had some other multifamily components down along Main Street, kind of near the park, but not really to the park. But it's been a similar pattern. And at one time, we were trying to get some sort of roadway corridors kind of snaking through there and connecting the Main Street at the same place where you have your number 4. And I've always looked at number 4 in that area as the secondary anchor, or call it the western anchor of Main Street, because you already have the eastern anchor over by 145 and some of the businesses and business opportunities that are over there. But this was always the anchor on the other end that brought the people to it. And this also provides the opportunity for direct access to the river, a recreational access, because it is a bigger expanse there. And there's more opportunity for more recreational events to occur, whether it be some sort of commonplace pavilion, a nature center, or someplace where you start drawing people to for your weekend activities, or starting out with your Saturday morning farmers market, and then it transitions into something else after that. But it brings people to this area at least, once a week, that they can then start drawing off of and going and supporting some of the other commercial components, whether it be some of the commercial strip mall areas that are built along Mequon Road as we head east towards Pilgrim, or the commercial centers with the grocery stores going already down to Pilgrim. It helps bring people to and through, which was always, the thought process of why there should be an anchor of some kind there. And we even looked at it to the plan of taking the park that's Hofstrasse and stretching it across all the way to connecting to the road that the high school is on, River Road over there, and having all that as part of a recreational component of this development.
And one thing, if I can add, I think, the comments thus far are definitely the intent, so I'm glad the drawing is showing this. But, we showed different densities of housing just really for flexibility. I think the village should, be supportive of, different higher density solutions. The important aspect that I would say is creating, again, this destination, with some sort of commercial, even if it's just one of these buildings that brings activity and life to Mequon Road, and then a really strong north to south public space, because no one wants to walk along Division. Even if you would reconstruct that, with a nice sidewalk, there's nothing that, a general outsider or even some residents are going to utilize, versus if part of this development, there's a grand, plaza, outdoor space as part of a restaurant, and then a great path that connects you to the park, but then also north to, a terminus point that says, oh, now I'm at Main Street, go half mile to the east and you're at the historic village center. That's really the important part when the Plan Commission and Village Board starts to look at potential developments for this area. Any other comments?
David? Nothing?
I'm biting my tongue.
Really?
We have had more battles in this community with high density housing, which is really what needs to go there and what works there, because that's multifamily in that area. But none of these residents will support more multifamily going in here.
But that's why it has to have that other component of whether it be the mixed use for, the commercial with residential above, but also provide that destination. And what brings the next hook to it is the parkland across the back. I think that it's more plausible to propose that as long as you're getting something else for that value. And what you're gaining is not only the access to the river, which we have none. If you want to go to Schoenlofen and call that access to the river, well, you get to look at it 3 times as you walk that path, but you don't get to it. You just get to look at it. So here we get access to the river that we can use and have it as a nice presentable place to hold some events. It could also be a starting point for some of these pathway systems and a destination to draw those pathway systems to, and create that secondary destination as you may even head out towards Holy Hill Road, going to whatever might be out in that area as part of your travel plan for that day.
If you created something along the lines of what Thiensville Mequon has created, that development, Spur 14, whatever it's called, that is stimulating people to go there, do things. That is an active, vibrant area. And if we can recreate that here with the residential spine going north, I can see it working. But it's a higher density. It's a different density.
It always comes with a higher density component. It needs it for the support. Any of them have that component, but some of them hide them better than others where they're on the outside perimeter of it and it's not as noticeable because the focus is in the middle where all the activity is and all the new shiny buildings or the old buildings have been refurbished, and it draws that attention there to where if you even look a little further, oh, there's apartments. Jeez, I didn't even see them. Unless you drive onto the outside roads. That's all of them. Whitestone Station, it's Thiensville, it's Mequon, it's 84th. They all have that component because they need it. Otherwise, your developer isn't going to get the support he needs on the commercial end of it.
It's an education of the residents. We have to educate them. It's not low-income housing that we're trying to get in here.
No, it's not.
It's just a different type of multifamily.
But we've seen plans before where we also gain the back half of the golf course as part of a park component.
Yeah.
That allows that additional recreation opportunity and allows additional views and use of the river in that area. That's the best place to access the river, I think, and it's centrally located in Germantown. It allows, it's not a neighborhood park. It's not Altbauer that's behind this neighborhood. It's not Wiedenbach that's behind this neighborhood. It's not Hofstrasse that's behind this neighborhood. This is a village park. It's in the middle of the village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see this going places. I could see something happening here. I just see the challenge that we have in front of us to get it done.
Absolutely. It's an educational challenge.
And I think, visual preference, if anyone on the Plan Commission has good examples, Donnie and I have our stock photos of different, townhomes, but, there's a lot of great designs that can be emphasized from a character standpoint that don't feel like they're, monstrous buildings, but really feel like, a typical residential street that you're walking down here and doesn't necessarily look like, a typical apartment building either.
Yeah, no, I like what I see. So personally, I wouldn't change it. And each of those buildings next to the number 5 is 6 units long. It's not a 30-unit long building. It's just 6. And they're broken up. So,
yeah, we're showing kind of, 150-foot length here buildings, which, 8 to 12, depending on, your size of units and 2-story, different configurations. So
great. Yeah.
As a general spectator, can I ask a question?
Please.
Absolutely.
Craig, you had mentioned that no one wants to walk down Division Road, which is why you suggested this alley. Can you explain that a little bit more? Why you wouldn't want to work with the existing infrastructure of Division Road to create more of that feel?
Yeah, I think it comes down to adjacent uses too. So Division Road and the uses that are along it right now are really set up to not embrace the road at all. So part of a pedestrian experience isn't just the sidewalk or the trail itself, but it's what use is adjacent to it. So, the design of this potential new promenade, would have a series of different outdoor seating, potential splash pad ice rink, like I said. What I didn't reference kind of on this north end is the idea for other kind of outdoor play fields or courts that could be part of, a village initiative for different recreational facilities as well. So the idea would be to activate, this corridor with different uses that people want to walk along versus just a nice trail, which can be nice, on Division Road. But again, it would be more of the amenities and uses adjacent to it.
Yeah, Jim, if you head over to Mequon, Thiensville, and go south of Mequon Road into that new development, the new buildings there just create a wonderful space at the road. The proportions of the building, the size of the road, the character of everything there is a nice place where people would walk down. Down Division Road, the monotonous apartment buildings are too far off the road, and there's a parking lot between the buildings and the road. The road is too wide and it's too fast. Even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour road, I don't think anybody does less than 40 down that road. It's just not a place that anybody except those living on it will walk.
Got it. Thanks for the explanation.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I know we're getting close to 2-hour mark. We have one more node. It's a little bit quicker and easier to digest, hopefully.
Any other comments on this?
And we can always circle back if there is comments. But the other node that we're showing here on this drawing is the intersection of Pilgrim and Mequon. And while this is specifically showing Pilgrim and Mequon, what I want to emphasize again is the idea of, again, 1 or 2 property owners, engaging in conversation with the village to really, this is essentially the same size of a Mequon town center, a 400 kind of by 400 strip of land, about 4 acres in size, where if you go back to our overall diagram, any of these intersections, if you get that sort of development that would, again, attract people and then draw people north with other bike and ped improvements, that's really the emphasis that the village should support at all of these major intersections. But this one is showing, potentially what's going to be the most attractive from a developer standpoint with traffic counts on Pilgrim Road and Mequon. And then also the potential, this is Sendik's existing right here, for some of your big boxes to get a little bit more visibility and attraction. If there's a highly designed plaza, outdoor seating, mixed-use development with ground floor retail and some residential above, designing the public space that, again, draws people in and then into the entire site with big box kind of strip malls that are tucked behind outlots that are really auto dominant. The hope would be that with new development, it forms more of a pedestrian friendly environment. And you can see the different image examples from both a building design and, public space, outdoor seating design that can be done a variety of ways. So I'll stop there and answer any questions on that one.
Great concept. It's a long range goal. You got to talk a lot of people into demolishing their buildings. But I agree with you. It will achieve what you want it to.
Also, you've got a gas station on that one corner, and then you got that small business one on the northeast corner. There's really nothing on that northwest corner. It's just parking lot, really. But you got that apartment complex, or you actually have the
Bank.
bank, right, and then you got that Germantown sign that nobody claims on that southwest corner. But
Yeah,
then,
and you can see
private land or if that's public land. I don't know if we've got right away there.
Yeah, and the drawing more or less kind of showed, all four intersection, forming a place, but obviously from a development standpoint, you really, essentially maybe wouldn't see anything in the southwest and the north, east right away, or, any of these. It would be kind of whichever one comes online first.
Yeah, southeast, you've got the bank and the medical center.
Yep, medical centers right here, gas stations right here, and then a vacant lot to the south.
Doesn't
That
mean
vacant
that
lots
Sender
actually.
Center couldn't go more to an open environment and change some of their facade in a Germanic way that would allow more people to come, to it to sit, and they could offer more takeout area. I mean, they have those open salad bars. They have that delicatessen area where if they could expand it for during the warmer months for people to go out there and spend lunch. I mean, that's an opportunity to bring people into that area too.
Take a look at the images in the circle. Image number 1, Mequon Road and Green Bay Road in Mequon. There used to be a gas station there, and I forget what was to the west of it. They picked up the gas station, replaced it. Oh, there was a VFW hall. They took the gas station, made it the VFW hall, moved it over there, moved the tank over, and created all this land for this development to go into.
Mm-hmm.
You got the
For
one
five.
number 2 is up in Grafton, Cedarburg,
Yep.
Grafton area, Highway 60, and I forget the cross street there.
But yeah, downtown Grafton.
Yeah, a lot of stuff had to be taken down for that, but it was shabby old stuff. So yeah, it took the interaction of the business owners to be ready, willing, and able to tear down their stuff, and somebody with a vision to recreate it.
David, do you know if those were all TIF districts or business improvement districts?
I can check with my guys because they did all this stuff.
Okay.
So let me
Number
ask
5 looks like Drexel Center.
It's not, but it is similar kind of concept there with a larger green space with mixed use surrounding.
So
Yeah.
it just takes some forethought, and the bank on the northwest corner. How old is that bank? 40, 50 years old?
It's an old building.
Yeah. These things are coming to the end of their lives. The building on the northeast corner, it's a 1-story. I think it's been chopped up a few times. That's why we got the angled corner on it.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a lot of business that goes in and out of there, small business, salons, realty companies, staffing companies, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they come and go a lot. Well, there is a vacant lot next to the bank. Okay. The gas station, man, if those aren't ready to fall down, I don't know what else is. But yeah, I think it's doable. It's got potential if we propose something. And, at some point, the owners of these properties are going to say they're not worth keeping, and they may be ready to tear it down. So when it's time, let's have a plan for it. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
the landscape company there. I've heard them looking to develop for years.
Costas?
Yeah, I've seen concept plans for that. I think I've done 1 or 2 of them.
This is Steve Krecklow, and if I could I wanted to interject as some thoughts about the financing. And I can't answer the questions about specific examples that were raised, but I do know that there are a lot of examples of municipalities that have been using tax increment funding for the types of things that we're talking about in these areas. I that Spur 16 in Mequon was utilized tax increment district funding. The Mayfair collection, Drexel Square, all of those were pretty heavily supported with tax increment district funding. And I think one thing, and this may be a stretch for the board to consider and the Plan Commission to consider, I think when residential housing has come in, the thought has been not to subsidize residential housing with tax increment districts. I think what some communities have been doing has been kind of the reverse, to use the increment from residential development to subsidize and support some of the amenities in the community that we've been talking about on the in the plan here. And I think it's just a little bit different change in perspective. It's not that the communities are subsidizing the residential development, but they're using that growth to build some of the infrastructure and the public amenities that people are looking for.
Yeah, now that you look at it, there's 3 buildings that are in question. Specialized Payroll, BP, and Chase Bank.
See, and then what I look at that, and that would help to to revitalize that area. But then I go a little bit further north up on Pilgrim, and I see more opportunity as it starts to get towards the 145 to our Main Street connection, with where you got the car wash and those old warehouses that are further up as it goes on the other side of the railroad track, up in that area right there.
Yeah, and then we talked about a concept drawing that allows you to get into from this apartment complex on the right to get back into that green space behind Main Street.
Who owns that? Who owns that blank piece? Yeah, and then we've talked about this over here too, to the that space behind Jerry's Old Town. It's a little squishy, but it's possible.
Yep, that's Jerry's.
Right there, yeah.
I like what Steve said. I think if you want something like this to happen, you're going to have to put something, the village is going to have to put something behind it, like a tax incremental district. And if you start there at the corner of Division and Mequon, and get it going the way that you want it to go, the way you want it to look, then it's only going to expand from there, go towards Main Street and continue on, whether it's tax increment or not, but it'll increase the value of the area, and people are going to like it. They're going to come there, and then it's just going to expand from there.
Yeah. Wait until you see what else happens over in Mequon, Thiensville. Stuff will develop around that development.
Yeah, people love those kind of developments these days, and I don't know if it's going to happen unless the village comes up with a way of taking one of these areas and saying, this is where we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it with, a tax incremental district or something.
There's no reason why Germantown should not have the best German beer hall in all of southeastern Wisconsin and embrace our German heritage. I say that somewhat jokingly, but there really is opportunity to build on, Germantown in the history to help create a sense of place and a unique, destination that is a draw.
Yeah. And where's our outdoor restaurants? Where's our outdoor seating? All we've got is the beer stubby, and everybody flocks to that place. So if you had the stuff that we've got down at Mequon and Green Bay Road, why can't we have all that stuff?
But one says we can't. You just got to start making the designations in your land use plan and start putting those plans together as lands turn over, knowing that this is the plan long term, and start
Stimulate it to happen. Stimulate it to happen. Instead of fighting with who's the apartment building behind Bub's?
Saxony Village?
You talking about Saxony Village?
Instead of fighting with Saxony Village, let's work with those guys to do something better, which is what we try to do.
Right.
And get the quality stuff that we want in our community.
And, we can continue this conversation too. And, Grafe is obviously here to assist and have worked with multiple developers, but, there's really great developers out there that you as a village, can be proactive and say, here's what we want. We like what you've done in other places. What does it take for you to do something similar here?
Yep.
So this is Peter. I have a question. Craig, have you guys looked at Main Street itself at all? Because I think it's a great idea to try to get traffic up to Main Street. But if there's not much going on Main Street, then what good does it do?
Yeah, we haven't dug deep into Main Street, and the thought just from a, facelift or kind of uplift, there's been recent plans as part of that Connecting Saxony that had some really good recommendations, from a streetscape and roadway design, I think to really be attractive and, get that nostalgia feeling, I think is a big part of that. And streetscape, village investment may be that first step. And then the businesses that want to be part of that follow up on that. So I think that really from a timing standpoint could be part of, the larger TIF conversation and infrastructure improvements throughout this village center area, and how you could start to put in the village investment from the infrastructure standpoint that attracts some more activity there. Jeff shared, previous plans from a development standpoint. We haven't analyzed them critically, but I think, a lot of them do make sense, stuff that has been drawn up, and, we don't necessarily need to recreate everything. I think you've done a lot of good planning already, specifically with kind of the connections, I think are great. Grafe and, a lot of consultants out there have done a lot of great, streetscape projects that I think will serve as a great identity for Main Street, which is, what you want to have as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Nothing from me.
Any other commissioners? I think that's a no. Anything else in regards to tonight's discussion that we want to get into or briefly talk about? Or do you want to go back to anything?
Well, can I ask a question? Let me go back to the very beginning, where we were kicking around ideas and how best to accommodate individual property owners who may have specific requests and ideas for how their land might be used and designated on our neighborhood district and corridor maps. We do have our next regularly scheduled meeting on February 8th. Do we want to leave open a couple agenda items for a couple of those property owners that we are aware of and invite them to come and talk with us about their ideas? Or do we want to truly wait until after our first, our February community meeting, where we've sort of set the table for everybody to have the same opportunity to come forward and provide feedback in a similar manner, starting with using our social pinpoint platform and then moving on from there?
I'll go with the consensus. So anybody have an input or comment to that?
I don't have a preference. I just want to get feedback, whether it's, what do you want to start immediately or wait till the presentation is ready?
Well, I don't want to falsely show a preference either, where someone feels that somebody's getting a preference based on either their ability to be a developer or their ability to put together a presentation.
Yeah, but I always counter that. But hey, I need to put something on paper to get you to comment. So I'm not too concerned about that.
If I can give my, consultant recommendation, I would say to wait on having any property specific presentations on the 8th because there's no changes that will be displayed, with anything that's presented at that plan commission meeting. And the social pinpoint website, and when we have this community-wide presentation of the NDC, really is going to be engaging where, any property owner could click on their property, and attach an image of, here's what I actually think it should be developed as. So every property owner is going to have that right and opportunity to say that they are supportive or not supportive of a specific future use. And I think that'll really pull out potentially areas that, hey, we weren't thinking about as a plan commission, and we do want to have a follow-up conversation or talk more with a specific property owner, and can schedule those necessary meetings, whether that's a plan commission meeting or even just staff having conversations like Jeff already has done, with these. There's sometimes a little bit with a comprehensive plan, there's a lot of opportunity that there's going to be a lot of people talking, but a lot of those conversations can get resolved at a staff level. And then the plan commission can hear what those discussions were and if there's still a need and desire, for plan commission to give additional feedback. But that's, more of an administrative question for Jeff as well.
I'm fine with that. And it makes sense in some cases that we're actually showing more of a refined plan at that time that everybody can have input into, rather than showing a head start and then having to change it based on what we've heard already. So everyone gets to start off on the same foot at the same time.
Okay. We'll move forward in that regard.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Comments?
I just had one comment, and that is the videos for both the Plan Commission and the Germantown Village Board meetings don't seem to be being put up, as quickly as they were in the past. So if you do want to see, what happened at these meetings or the board meetings, I think, they're several months behind. I was just wondering if anyone knows what happened, why it is.
Steve or Emily?
I have heard that they are working on it. We're running out of space, like for storage on our website is the issue. So they are working on it to get it caught up.
There are some also past meetings that are available on YouTube, correct, Steve?
Yeah, actually, and Emily is correct. We had been posting those videos on our website, and it's hosted by an organization that we've been having some issues with, and they informed us that there wasn't enough space, and that some of the videos, I don't know, something about our meetings being too long, and
I blame Art.
But we've established a YouTube channel, and actually over the last couple of days we've been catching up with the village board meetings, and the plan commission should be coming up shortly. So it is. We did figure out what the issue is. We've got a solution, and they're getting posted out there.
Okay, can you shoot that out to plan commissioners so that they can pass that along as well? And maybe we'll put it on the website so that people that are interested in that can at least go and see past meetings that way.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Anything else? Thank you for bringing that forward, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else? Does anyone have any announcements they'd like to make?
Excuse me. This is Brian. Could I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
Okay, just wanted to clarify then. Earlier in the discussion when Bill Carity was on, I was assuming that he could bring a plan kind of to the Germantown planners to kind of show him what he was thinking. But now you're saying that should not be done at this point. Is that correct?
He can bring it forward. I don't know what he's shared with Jeff so far, but he is more than welcome to set up an appointment with Jeff and go through that. But what we're asking for is for everybody to wait until we have our presentation on, what's the date again, Craig?
February 10th. I think, Jeff, you're muted, but yeah, the 10th of February, I believe, is the date.
Okay. And then at that point, we could schedule any others that we would want to follow up with, whether it be Mr. Carity or yourself. But they are, anyone is welcome that has that plan that they'd like to bring forward for consideration at that time can meet with Jeff and schedule time with him to go through that as well. But we're not looking at it at the next plan commission meeting, but we're looking more of it to launch it after that February 10th meeting.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that with Bill because I think he had dropped out of the meeting. So
There was some concern about preference or showing somebody preference based on their size or ability to be a developer. And I think if we launch it and show everybody what's available and how they can add input to it, you're starting everybody off at the same time on the same foot and showing everybody kind of an equal stance there. And there's no way for someone to point the finger back to say, yeah, but. So I think that's the best way to go forward.
yeah, the only thing at this point, I don't believe there has been any input from the company that's been doing this as far as input from landowners to this point. So I guess if that's just, we can wait with that. I guess that's fine. But I would have preferred if we would have been maybe a little more on the front side of this. And I know with COVID and everything, this maybe got all befuddled, I guess, over time here. But
Yeah, prior to COVID, we were having input from residents because we had an open meeting for them and people showed up
right,
and they
right.
were engaging in the conversation with us.
Yes, and I was at those, and I guess, like I said, I just I didn't know this was all like started up again to this point at this depth of it already. So okay,
Anything's in stone yet, and it's still being discussed through. And part of that meeting's point is to say, all right, this is what we've talked about so far, and this is what we've come up to. Now we're looking for your input so that we can start to refine it, define it, and start to put it together in a package to be presented and have the public meeting about.
okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for staying with us tonight. I appreciate that. Anyone have any announcements they'd like to make? If not, we can be adjourned, and everybody have a good rest of your evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching, and thank you all for participating.
Thanks. Good night.